and bless the one who blesses. Come all of you, come all of us, and bless the one who blesses. Blessed is the blessed one. Blessed is the giver of blessings. Blessed in this moment now and every now to come. Blessed is the blessed one. Blessed is the giver of blessing. Blessed in this moment now and every now to come. Come all of you, come all of us, and bless the one who blesses. Come all of you, come all of us, and bless the one who blesses. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Come all of you, come all of us, and bless the one who blesses. Come all of you, come all of us, and bless the one who blesses. Do-do-do,
Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed, Le'olam va'ed. Ya-la-la-la-la, 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 ya-la-la. Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la.
שברחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומנעים שברחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומנעים שברחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומנעים שברחים גם יחד. How sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. הנה מה טוב ומנעים שברחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומנעים שברחים גם יחד. שלום עליכם, סלאם עליכום. שלום עליכם, סלאם עליכום. שלום עליכם, סלאם עליכום. שלום עליכם, סלאם עליכום. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together.
We begin with a prayer for peace. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, ve'imru, amen. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. I'm Cantor Julia Cadrain. I'm the senior cantor here at Temple Israel, here with wonderful members of our staff team, Sean and Lindsay, who helped make this sacred gathering possible. This is a gathering of support and comfort as we remember and honor the life of Maurice Reznick, husband of Joni, father of Max and Ricky and Sammy, father-in-law of Claire, River, and Madeline, grandfather of Reese, brother of Mario, brother-in-law of Trudy. Everyone here has their own relationship, stories, and sacred connections with Maurice as a beloved friend and family member and colleague, and we honor all of those relationships, and we thank you for being part of this gathering of love and support. At a time of grief, we turn to our tradition for comfort. Psalm 121 says, Esa einai el heharim, I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. This is a reminder that as we grieve, we are surrounded by the support of community and by the divine spirit. Esa einai el heharim, me'ayin yavo Ezri, Ezri me'im Adonai, ose shamayim va'aretz, ayiten lamot raglecha, al yanum shomrecha, hine lo yanum velo yishan, shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha, al yad yeminecha. Yomam hashemesh velo yakeka, ve'yareach malayla. Adonai yishmorcha mikora, yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzedcha uvoecha, me'ata ve'ad olam, me'ata ve'ad olam. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will keep you from all harm. God will watch over your life, your coming and going, now and always. The ancient prophet Ecclesiastes wrote, For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. The heart of our service will be speaking loving words of memory and honor from some of the people who were the closest to Maurice. So we have a few of Maurice's dear friends, actually beginning with Maurice's brother Mario, and then we'll hear from dear friends Bruce and Elliot and Gary, and then finally from Maurice's sons Max and Ricky and Sammy. So we'll begin with Mario.
So I'll start by warning you that Maurice and I come from a long line of mushes. So as you can tell, you're going to see me crying. And in Yiddish, the word for somebody that cries a lot is plaxter, and I'm proud to wear that name. So I struggle to find the right words because losing my brother feels unreal. I know that he'd want me to speak from my heart, so that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm very grateful for everybody here because my brother loved deeply and was loved deeply in return. It means everything to stand among people who felt the joy he exuded when he spent time with them. Whether it was family, a friend, or a stranger, you always felt his goodness. As many of you know, Maurice and I, our family emigrated from Argentina. We used to joke that we had accomplished the American dream, starting with very little and somehow turning our lives into what our parents envisioned America would be for us. For the first year of our lives, in New York, we had each other. That's all we had. We didn't speak English. We had no friends. And because our New York family was Hasidic, we were enrolled in the yeshiva. Every day we would take the bus to school, and every day we talked about how much we hated going there. Having Maurice by my side was what kept me going. From a young age, Maurice always had a terrific sense of humor and was always a trusting soul. That played wonderfully into my hand because as the older brother, I took every opportunity to pull pranks on him. He never once got angry at me for all the practical jokes. He always told me how funny they were. Growing up, one of the few toys we had was a knock hockey set. I don't know how many are familiar with that. And we played it constantly. There was a stretch of a week where I shut him out every time we played. He couldn't understand why he couldn't score. After a week, I showed him that I had put Scotch tape behind my goal, and I thought he would be upset, but instead, he thought that was the funniest thing in the world. If you knew my brother, you knew his drive. He showed up, he worked hard, and he never cut corners. But what made him unforgettable wasn't just his work ethic, it was the loving heart behind everything he did. He always gave 100% no matter what he was doing. Some of you may not know, but probably most of the women do know, that Maurice had a superpower. He was able to meet a woman and immediately tell her what size bra he wore. Among his many interests was golf. While he was taking lessons, he would call me to tell me what an awesome golfer he was, even though he had never been on a golf course. A couple of Maurice's golf stories. Early in his golf career, I invited him to play at my club. We had a terrific time spending time together. The golf part was tough for him because he lost 23 golf balls in one day, which, by the way, is still a club record. Another time, he played with a mutual acquaintance who was a very good golfer. A few days later, I spoke to the golf partner, and she proceeded to tell me that not only was Maurice a mediocre golfer at best, he was the worst golf cart driver she had ever seen. I told her that wasn't limited to golf cart driving. Through the many years, I always loved being together with Maurice. No matter what we did, his zest for life was contagious. Sorry, lost my spot when I started crying. Contagious, sorry. He was a Renaissance man, whether it was work, family, exercise, art, reading, whatever he did, he always gave it 100%. He loved talking about his family. You could feel the pride, love, and joy he derived from them. Maurice would call me to tell me about the latest trip he took with his boys. The other thing he always told me is the luckiest day of his life was the day he married Joni. After family, his passion was Yankees, Giants, and Knicks. That caused a lot of disagreements because I'm a tortured Mets and Jets fan. Growing up, we had more yelling and punching fights about our teams than any other arguments. I loved my little brother. In addition to being an awesome brother and friend, he was the link to our family history. We could talk about our past and wonder how we got where we were. We loved reminiscing and sharing our stories with our families. After getting a call from Max telling me that Maurice had passed, I cried a lot. Then it occurred to me that I no longer had anybody to reminisce with. That made me cry again. Honestly, as you can tell, I haven't stopped crying. In the Jewish religion, we have a concept called Olam Haba. This is the term of our spiritual afterlife. Traditional Jewish thinking teaches us that the soul returns to a divine homecoming. I picture Maurice's soul hanging out with our parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and relatives we never met. Their souls are drinking mate and getting caught up. I picture a reunion where they're all together, seeing each other, looking healthy, and watching over us. Maurice, thank you for being an amazing brother. Thank you for loving me when sometimes I was an asshole to you. Thank you for the good times together. I cherish those memories. I love you and will hug you tightly when we meet again. Joni, Max, Ricky, and Sammy, I thank you for the love and devotion you gave him, especially during his illness. I love you very much. So now I'm going to do something that I have never done before, and I promise you I will never do again, but I'm doing it in honor of my brother. That's enough. So, the last thing I have is just between Maurice and me. When we were little, we had a little joke that we had with our parents that we mostly did so annoy the heck out of them. So I'll just finish with this, which is, Mauri, ¿te gusta el cha-cha-cha? Lo vamos a bailar. I love you, Maurice. Thank you.
Maurice was, I didn't think I was going to do that. Maurice was one of the great blessings of my life. And looking around this room at all of you, and I know so many of you or have heard about many of you, I know you all feel exactly the same way I do. But before I tell a few stories, and some you may hear over and over again, by the people who come up. And believe me, there are plenty of good stories that probably are yet to be told. I want to say something to Joni and to Max, Ricky, Sammy, your beautiful wives, and to little Reese. Thank you for sharing Maurice with all of us here. We all love Maurice, but we know none of us loved Maurice as much as you all did. Maurice and I met more than 30 years ago. There was never an awkward getting to know you moment. We simply just clicked. Maybe it was because we couldn't have been more different. Different backgrounds, different careers, different sports passions, and yet somehow it worked perfectly. See, Maurice was unlike anybody I had ever met. He was an immigrant from Argentina. He carried that story with enormous pride. He loved telling stories about his parents and his brother and coming to America. And if you knew Maurice, you've probably heard those stories more than once. And you are happy to hear them again because it reminded you of what mattered to Maurice: family, gratitude, and never forgetting where you came from. And of course, before you learned any of that, you noticed something else. You see, Maurice was ridiculously handsome. like movie star handsome. Tall, Latin, and that hair, oh my God. As someone who may be a little hair challenged, I was like jealous of that. And that Maurice, he was always impeccably dressed. I mean, always. And he believed looking good wasn't optional. And unfortunately, he also believed it was his responsibility to improve my wardrobe. Now, he surprised me with clothes, okay, gave me fashion advice I never requested, and more than once, Joni, more than once, he goes into my closet and starts deciding which clothes had to go and which were, in his words, not up to standards. I probably should have taken more of his apparel advice, though, and my family tells me that over and over. And then, of course, you mentioned there was his career. You know, only Maurice could spend a lifetime selling women's bras and panties and somehow becoming everyone's expert. His ability to talk to complete strangers, especially women, was unbelievable. And women he just met were discussing their bra sizes and styles and fit. I mean, things they wouldn't even tell their lover or husband. And then a few days later, they'd receive underwear in the mail. And I said, Maurice, he says, market research, that's it. And the rest of us guys are going, how does he do that? Hey, by the way, how many of you went to Market Week with him? Exactly. You know, for my 50th birthday in Aspen, Maurice arrived with these life-size, maiden-form, cut-out, scantily clad models and custom T-shirts with the ladies on them as well. It was completely over the top, completely unnecessary, and completely Maurice. For years afterward, I'd randomly receive socks or underwear. Maybe he figured if everyone else was getting underwear from Maurice, he owed it to me to send some underwear. Look, as funny as he was, Maurice had an enormous heart. He was emotional, sensitive, deeply caring. He had a gift that became far too rare. You see, when Maurice would ask you, how are your kids? He wasn't just making random conversation. He genuinely wanted to know. And then he'd ask about your grandchildren, and he'd remember names, birthdays, graduations. He remembered your life. How many of our children interned at Maidenform because Maurice opened that door? Our daughters did, Liza and Caroline. They loved it. And to the occasional frustration of his professional designers, Maurice actually listened to the interns because he believed good ideas can come from anyone. That tells you so much about Maurice. Curious, respectful, always learning. And now for all his sophistication, Maurice absolutely had no sense of direction. None. Or time. He'd leave on a bike ride, say, I'll be back in an hour. And sometime later in the day, I was worried it was going to be nightfall. Joni would say, don't worry, he'll be back. And eventually he'd return and say, I missed one turn. One turn? His driving was legendary. Honestly, I think the automobile parts industry just lost one of its best customers. And I'll never forget that trip years ago to Utah. Maurice finally arrived hours late, and he admitted, well, I got 4 flat tires. Maurice, how does one get 4 flat tires? And he'd explained how he drove over the spikes at the rental car lot He thought the exit was the entrance. And I said, 1 tire, sure. 2 tires, maybe. 4, only Maurice. And I assure all of you, there are probably dozens of accidents he's never admitted to. And as you mentioned, he loves sports, New York sports, the Yankees, the Giants, and of course the Knicks. And like every loyal Knicks fan, he spent years believing, I heard it over and over, this is the year, this is the year. And as we all know, usually it wasn't. But when they finally won the championship, he celebrated like a kid. And I can't tell you how grateful I am he got to experience that joy. Because looking back, it became one more blessing in what he later called the best 2 years of his life. Now, just between us, when his teams lost, let's just say he did not believe in graceful defeat. Maurice believed a good loser was still a loser, and he was incredibly competitive about everything. He exercised like an Olympic athlete. He constantly tried recruiting me, swimming and cycling, those ridiculous snorkel masks. I kept getting them in the mail, another one. He never gave up trying to improve me. He always loved betting on himself, though, and competing with me. And fortunately, every once in a while, I could get in his head and tease him and beat him. Oh, I'm going to really miss that. During COVID, one of our greatest gifts was speaking Spanish together. Hours and hours of conversation, practicing, laughing, planning a trip to Mexico that sadly never happened. Those conversations are some of my favorite memories. I had other memories that were so great. When we lived in Ottawa, Maurice came to visit often. And my favorite memory was the Marine Ball. You see, the Marines celebrate their birthday every year at embassies around the world. Well, neither of us had our wives there. We ate, we drank, we danced. Well, I danced. Maurice attempted to dance. And finally, one direct Canadian woman walked over to him, looked him straight in the eye, and said, "You are perhaps the worst dancer I have ever seen. And in fact, I am certain you are the worst dancer in the entire world." And Maurice loved that. He started laughing. I'm like, okay. And laughing at yourself is a wonderful gift. Maurice never stopped learning. Hunger for learning. Guitar, painting, drawing, audible books, podcasts, documentaries, history, politics, ideas. I want to tell you, we debated all of that. We debated it, and he convinced me to join what was my very first book club in New York. And we'd take those books, and we'd listen together. We argued, we agreed, we debated, we listened. But that's another thing Maurice did well. He listened. So I've been thinking all week about what makes a great friend. And I think Maurice taught us. A great friend makes you laugh. A great friend tells you the truth, even if you don't want to hear it. Just ask my closet. A great friend celebrates your successes as though they were his own. A great friend remembers your family and your children and grandchildren. But a great friend recognizes your worries and celebrates your joys. Maurice was that kind of friend. And looking around this room, I'm willing to bet he was that kind of friend to many of you all around this room. Most of all, Maurice was devoted to Joni. She was the love of his life. Nothing made him happier than talking about Joni and his 3 boys, Max, Ricky, and Sammy, and then their lovely wives, and then finally little Reese. And he just wasn't simply just proud of them. These were his greatest joy. And one of the greatest gifts over the last 2 years was seeing him surrounded by them. The weddings, the birth of Reese, the celebrations. And not long ago, I sat down and asked Maurice, what were the best parts of his life as we were reflecting on it? And he told me the last 2 years have been the best part of his life. Think about that. With all of the illness that he faced, all the business successes that he had, all the accomplishments, what mattered most wasn't the business, it wasn't the money, it was Joni, It was the boys. It was the family and friends. It was time together. What a lesson for all of us. Don't wait. These right now are the moments. These are the gift. And I've thought a great deal this week about losing a friend. And I kept coming back to something I read recently. You see, Ann Patchett has this new novel, Whistler, but she started the book with a quote from Jules Verne. It goes like this: "I only ask to live another 100 years so that your memory will remain with me longer." I first read those words, I thought, wow, that's beautiful. And today, they break my heart. Because if I could ask for another 100 years, it wouldn't be for me. It would be so I could laugh with Maurice one more time. I could hear one more story about Argentina, watch him come straighten my collar, listen to him tell me the Yankees were finally going to win it all, or watch him celebrate another Knicks victory. But none of us gets another 100 years. What we do get is the privilege of remembering him and the responsibility of telling his stories. You see, as long as we do that, Maurice will still be making us laugh. He'll still be teaching us. He will remind us of what loyalty, friendship, curiosity, generosity, and love look like. Maurice, te amo, amigo. Gracias. For more than 30 years of laughter, friendship, loyalty, and love, we will carry you with us for the rest of our lives, and may your memory be a blessing.
Thank you, Bruce. Elliot will invite you forward.
Thank you. Incidentally, Maurice gave me these white sneakers. That's why I'm wearing them. Baruch Dayan Hamet. Thank you, Joni, Max, Ricky, and Sammy, for the honor of saying a few words about your husband and dad. I'd like to start off by telling you a story that happened about a dozen years before we met the Reznicks. It was my senior year at prep school, and I got into a conversation about the definition of friendship with the student living next door, Tommy Osterman. I described my ideal, and he said, "That's not friendship, that's brotherhood." It turns out I was describing the very relationship that I was lucky enough to create with Maurice. I told this story to Joni a few years after Maurice and I had become friends many, many years ago. And oddly enough, she knew Tommy and had coincidentally grown up with him in Toledo. Weird. The term friendship seems so inadequate to describe the brotherhood I felt with Maurice. We talked about anything and everything, nothing off limits, no such thing as TMI, and the love we felt for each other was immeasurable. It made me more than I was before I met him, and the better part of who I am now. Nancy and I met Joni and Maurice in Chicago in 1988. We were fixed up, both transplanted East Coasters, and very quickly we became inseparable. We each personified our I Love Lucy roles. Lucy, Ricky, Fred, and Ethel, and I think everyone here can figure out who is who in that four-way relationship. We were so close that we didn't just share family milestones, we crashed them. When Nancy was giving birth to Avery, Joni snuck into the hospital by claiming she was Nancy's sister. Not to be outdone, when Joni gave birth to Ricky, we did the exact same thing. I had just helped Maurice buy a new digital video camera, which was a separate ordeal, incidentally. So I grabbed it and started filming Joni about an hour after she had delivered. As you might imagine, Joni was not very pleased. Maurice started chasing me around the delivery room, trying to grab the camera, and Joni actually tried to hand newborn Ricky off to Nancy so she could get up and chase me. That's when I finally relented. Thankfully, they forgave me. From simple memories like walking our strollers together to competitive backyard tetherball, I once broke Maurice's nose, to supporting each other through life's highs and lows, just being together has always been our favorite pastime. My entire family adore Maurice and Joni. He quickly became Uncle Mo to my kids, Avery, Jake, and Olivia, and always championed their accomplishments. He lived by advice my father had given him to take every opportunity to listen to your children. When you're in the car with your kids, turn off the radio and talk to them, engage them. Max, Ricky, and Sammy, your dad loved that advice and lived by that credo. While we bonded over shared interests and general intellectual curiosity, what I cherished most was his character. He was a great listener, thoughtful, non-judgmental, and humble. They say it is easier to be clever than kind, but Maurice was both. As Bruce mentioned, how many people benefited from the Maidenform summer internship program? Both clever and kind. The smart, the kid, they got the kids benefited from the great learning experience, and Maidenform got smart young minds. More than anyone, he reminded me of my own dad. I am who I am because of them both. My favorite thing about Maurice was his passion. He was the most enthusiastic member of our book club, passionately dominating the book choices. Whether it was the Giants, the Yankees, or his career, he was all in. Once, the Wilpons invited us to the owner's box at Citi Field for a Mets-Yankees game. Mo started screaming at the top of his lungs for the Yankees, completely ignoring the horrified Mets fans looking at us like we were crazy. The Wilpons weren't horrified, incidentally. They were just amused. He was always true to himself. He brought the same unapologetic passion to Maidenform. I'll never forget him going on to CNBC to explain how his miracle bra literally saved a woman from flying metal while she was mowing her lawn. Next thing you know, it's the #1 selling bra in America. True story. Maurice also got me into cycling. He had a fancy 30-gear racing bike, but he only ever used one gear, high gear. High gear. It was the perfect metaphor for his life, always pushing himself as hard as he could. He was my ride or die friend. We took risks, we leaned in, we went all out. I simply can't accept that the ride is over. On those long rides, we talked about everything, but the topic Maurice returned to more than any other was Joni and his sons. He loved Joni more than life itself, crediting her with everything good in the world. Whenever we discussed life before Joni, it just reminded him how incredibly lucky he was. Of all the couples I know, no one had a better, more loving relationship. They cherished each other. Anyone in their orbit could feel it. We still feel it. No two people have ever been more in love. And nothing gave Mo greater joy than Max, Ricky, and Sammy. He was so proud of the high caliber men you've become and the partners you've chosen. He was crazy for Reese, of course, and he knew his future grandchildren would be just as amazing because of how impressive his boys are. When he first got his diagnosis, he told me at Greenwich Hospital that he was terrified of leaving you. But recently, all he talked about was how blown away and proud he was by how you all showed up for him these last few years. Over the years, Maurice essentially became my therapist, loving, non-judgmental, and offering what psychologists call unconditional positive regard. He was incredibly humble about himself, but he bragged endlessly about his family and friends. He was a master caveller, and everyone here felt his love. Which brings me to the last time I was with Mo. We watched the Argentina-England semifinal match together. That was his true love, where they staged a thrilling comeback and won 2-1 to put them in the finals. At the end, a commentator summed up the game by describing Messi and the Argentine squad. They played with passion, emotion, and fight. I leaned over to Mo and said, "That sounds like a pretty good description of your life." He smiled. "I guess so." Maurice Reznick. He played with passion, emotion, and fight, and I will miss him more than words can say.
Ellie, that was beautiful. Hi, I'm Gary. And Joni and team, thanks for asking me to speak. I'm honored and deeply moved by the first three speeches. For the last 2 decades, our families have been completely intertwined. The Reiners and the Reznicks, originally brought together by our kids. We vacationed as one big family every year, exploring different geographies, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Uruguay, Argentina, of course, and a few other choice spots. What started as kid-driven grew into a seamless, joyful, and deep friendship among Mo, Joe, Peggy, and me. Easily, Peggy's and my favorite nights here in Westport have been spontaneous dinners with with the two of you. We would eat for an hour, but end up talking for 3, and it was still too quick. Maurice's warmth was authentic and contagious. Yes, he was a righteous man, always doing the right thing. He was immensely curious, always pushing our book club, since there's a couple here, to try new topics in the spirit of further learning. And he was disciplined, working out for 2 hours every day, and just amazing at it. But it was his genuine warmth and caring for his family and friends that most characterized him. And of course, his signature hugs. Despite his Latin macho upbringing, Mo was defined by the people he loved and who loved him back. By this, I don't mean the Yankees, the Knicks, and the Giants, although I am convinced that the Knicks and Argentine soccer team's recent successes extended his presence with us far longer than his doctors might have predicted. As has been mentioned, his love for his 3 boys was legendary and well-deserved. His connection with each was deep and reciprocated. The care each son brought when Mo got sick was something to behold, and it stemmed from the love he showed them. Just as one example, we all know a great way to deepen relationships with our children is to do one-on-one trips. Though we don't often do it, Mo did in spades. Over the years, Mo took each of his boys alone on trips around the world and cherished every minute of it. He loved his boys completely, revered different things about them, and was so proud of each of them. His awe of Max was in the mensch you have become, as so many of us have joyfully watched. Max's ability to take control of tough situations is incredible, and Mo was so proud. A typical measure of your menschiness, if that's a word, came after Mo had his first surgery. Max put together a group list and texted us daily the updates on Mo's recovery. Of course, it's also a measure of Mo's deep love for and by his many friends that list grew to well over 40 people. Ricky's contagious curiosity for and passion for life, for food, for wine, for music, movies, books, you name it, clearly expanded your dad's own appreciation for the same and brought him such joy. Sammy's off-the-charts discipline, talent, dedication in all aspects of your life inspired Mo and almost certainly caused him to stay as dedicated to fitness as he did. Even more joy came to both Mo and Joe as they realized how much their sons love each other. It's every parent's dream, and boy, did that make Mo happy. But what really brought not just joy and inspiration, but also great comfort to Mo was each of his boys' wives. Claire's scrapbook, production on Mo's life, and her daily FaceTime with Mo, showing Reese's smiling face, was just fabulous. River, with her artistic and tennis skills and a personality to spare, well, Mo actually had to apologize for bragging about her so often. And Madeline's obvious and deep affection for Mo, her super medical and practical talents, and her ability to rein in Sammy's wilder behaviors was a true blessing. And then, of course, there's Joni. Truly unique in the most beautiful way possible. You love her when you first meet her, and the more you know her, the more you love her. Her favorite saying is from her beloved grandfather, who said, "If you like the fella, tell the fella." And with that, Joni has given license for all of us to be as open about our feelings as she is. Mo often said the only complaint he had about Joni was she was too perfect. A big part of Mo's unique charm and warmth was his transparent love and caring for his friends, helped by the best coach in the world, his wife. What Maurice understood better than anybody was that whatever he gave of himself to his family, he would get back in spades, and so he did. So the Mo we've all known and loved unabashedly has been not just what he brought to the table, but the mosaic of what he proudly gained from his adoring family. Max's world-class ability to step up, Ricky's deep and contagious curiosity, Sammy's drive and discipline, and most importantly, Joni's abundance of warmth. Joni, Max, Ricky, and Sammy, as devoted as Mo was to each of you and as generous as he was with his time, his thoughts, and his feelings, the impact each of you had on him was unmistakable and a big part of why we all loved him the way we did. We know losing Mo will be one of the toughest things we will ever have to go through. It already has been. We loved him dearly and will so miss him. Like so many others here, we were blessed to be his friend. Joni, you, of course, have been his rock. Peggy and I were awed by the way you handled Mo's decline. Your patience, your external optimism, even when you knew the truth. Even how you stepped up your dinner table convos when Mo was less able to. We love you fiercely and will forever be with you. With so much love to the entire Reznick family, Peggy and myself. Thanks.
I'm Max, for those of you that don't know. The last time I gave a speech in this room, a room like this, it was for my dad's bar mitzvah. Got bar mitzvahed at 44 years old, and I was there. I was 8 years old, and I opened by announcing to everyone, my father is a good man. He sells bras. I've had a lot of years to come up with a better opening, and I'm not sure I have. But before anything else, our family needs to thank you, all of you. Over these last 2 years, you carried us and looked after our parents. Susan and Richard for the countless hours decoding medical jargon for us, their pizza group, their Greenwich friends, their Manhattan friends, their Chicago friends. You all sacrificed so much to make these last 2 years special to him. And to everyone who ever took him golfing, let the record show he was a liability out there long before he got sick, and you kept putting him on your tee times anyways. You're the real heroes. A little bit about my dad. I know you've heard a lot already, but he came here from Argentina with nothing. Poor immigrant kid who shared a single bedroom with his parents and his brother. He sold peanuts at Shea Stadium. He worked odd jobs from the time he was a boy to help support his family. And from those odd jobs, he built a career that still doesn't seem real, working his way up through the lingerie industry on nothing but grit and talent until he was named Chief Executive Officer of Maidenform. The kid selling peanuts at Shea grew up to run the company and then take it public. And then he spent the rest of his life making sure his own children would never know that struggle. College, sports, vacation, our own bedrooms, the thing he never had. Everything he gave us, he gave because someone once didn't give it to him. And anytime you'd marvel at his rags to riches story, he'd humbly say, it's a great country. Now, growing up poor, my dad kept his shekels close. He paid for my entire childhood, but he never once handed us cash. Mom did that behind his back. Love you, Mom. Until the day he dropped me off at college, he looked me in the eyes, told me how proud of me he was, and then said, "Now, I don't normally do this," and he reached into his pocket, pulled out a $10 bill, and said, "But I want you to have a good year." But money was never where you saw the real him. For that, you had to get him on a golf course. My dad and I loved playing together, and I mean loved it, despite the fact that we were both terrible. Historically bad, actually. Two Reznick men losing golf balls in places that balls should never be able to go to. But that was never the point. The point was the hours together. Just us, nowhere else to be. And every once in a while, Dad would catch one clean, hit a real shot, and he'd turn to me dead serious and say, "Now that's the real Maurice." And when we weren't out there proving we couldn't play sports, we were watching them. We shared a fanatical, borderline unhealthy love of New York sports, the Yankees, the Giants, and the Knicks, probably because neither of us had any business playing a sport ourselves. But for all the athletes we worshipped, my real hero never wore a jersey. Most kids in the 90s idolized Jordan or Jeter or Tiger. I idolized my dad, and I never stopped. Part of it was the way he saw me. My dad thought everything we did was incredible, and I mean everything. If one of his boys did it, he reacted like he'd witnessed a miracle. He was a lifelong card-carrying celebrator of our mediocrity. A B-, a decent parallel park, a golf shot that merely stayed on the same continent. To him, it was all genius. And what impressed him most was never the end result, but the process to get there. He taught us the value of hard work before I understood what he was doing. Pushed me to umpire Little League at 13, to work at a shoe store at 16. He never missed a chance to tell me he was proud of me or that he loved me. He told me that if I failed at everything else, all he wanted was for me to be happy. And he told me to never quit. Then showed me exactly what that meant, fighting this thing for 2 years with everything he had. Everything I am because of him. My mornings start with a workout, that's him. The way I refuse to let anyone outwork me, that's him. He didn't teach me with lectures. He taught me by living it, every day until it became mine without noticing it. And above all, he loved unconditionally. He and my mom gave us boys one rule. Family comes first, and nothing gets in the way of that love. I'll never forget the day I told him he was going to become a grandfather. It was right after his diagnosis, and he wept uncontrollably. And through the tears, he immediately proclaimed that he would be called Zeta. Now, Jews don't normally name after the living, but Claire and I didn't care because we wanted to name our son after the greatest man we've ever known. The day Maurice was born, Dad came to the hospital and just stared at him. My mom was holding the baby and wouldn't let go until Dad finally said, "Joni, let me hold him. His name is Maurice, not Joni." And I watched my father hold his first grandson, crying, completely overcome. Little Maurice may not get to have big Maurice in his life, but he's going to know exactly who he was. And I could only be so lucky if my son grows up to be even a fraction of the man my father was. And so many of his moments with that grandson he owed to Claire. My dad adored her. She didn't just marry into this family, he claimed her as his own, and he was not quiet about it. Every single day, Claire would FaceTime with little Maurice, and every single day he'd tell anyone within earshot about it. His friends, his doctors, total strangers. My daughter-in-law FaceTimes me every day with my grandson. It was the proudest sentence in his vocabulary. He never got the years with little Maurice that he wanted, and that was the thing he fought hardest against, because my dad loved us so much that he could never stand the thought of leaving us. At the end, he was scared. I won't pretend he wasn't. But even at his most frightened, he never once believed he was going to go. No matter how bad it got, he promised us he'd keep fighting. There came a point where it would have been easier to let go. He kept fighting anyway. Not for himself, but for us, because he knew we needed him. He told me I was his best friend and that I'd always need him. And he was right. And needing him was never hard because he was always there. We talked every single day. Every day on the drive to work, on the drive home, sometimes for no reason at all. I always knew that if I picked up the phone, my dad was on the other end of it. My phone feels impossibly heavy now. I still go to call him. My thumb still knows exactly where his name is. And then I remember there's no one to pick up. More than anything, I will miss his voice on the other end of that line. I would give anything for one more phone call. But even though he's not here, he always will be. Because he's in my heart. And that's the one place this disease could never reach. So here's the lesson, the one he'd want you to take home today. Always be curious. Always strive to be better. And always, always love unconditionally. Go home and tell your kids or your parents or your brothers and sisters how much you love them, because that's exactly what my dad would do. I love you, Dad. You're the real Maurice.
When I think about my dad, I think about the wonderful dichotomy that was his life. He always prioritized his family, often at the expense of socializing, yet he loved all his friends deeply, openly, and honestly. He always said feelings are usually mutual, and the people he loved, and unfortunately the people he didn't love, always knew where they stood with him. He was so busy, yet always made time for us. He lived a very active lifestyle, and he loved playing sports, yet he wasn't very good at any of them. Even on the eve of a big board meeting or an earnings call or a business trip halfway across the world, he always made time to play with us like the big giant kid that he was at heart. From the time I was old enough to roll a ball, he would hit baseballs to me in our backyard for hours. He'd be dripping in sweat, exhausted and sore, but he refused to be the one to call it a day. A tradition we kept until his disease made it impossible for him to stand. Calling every play like John Sterling in Game 7 of the World Series, he transformed that little patch of grass into our own private field of dreams. He was so big, strong, and disciplined, yet he was also so vulnerable, clumsy, and endearingly goofy. I remember one time we went to a Yankee game, and he was trying so hard to open his mustard packet that when he finally ripped through it, the mustard squirted all over the back of an unsuspecting patron sitting in front of him. The guy had absolutely no idea until the 7th inning when his friend pointed it out, but by then, my dad had destroyed the evidence. Luckily, he skipped the relish and mustard that day. He could be quick to lose his cool, but also quick to apologize with comically disarming quips. He would say things like, "You're being an asshole." And then if you asked, "Did you just call me an asshole?" He'd say, "Whoa, I didn't call you an asshole. I said you were acting like an asshole." Instantly diffusing the conflict with levity in a way that only he could get away with. He loved to speak publicly and certainly wasn't afraid of being the center of attention, but he was also an incredible listener. He was at times forgetful, but if you told him something in passing that he thought was wise, he'd bring it up to you years later to tell you that your comment, which you probably didn't even remember saying, completely changed his life. He accomplished so many great feats in his lifetime, yet he was always on a quest for self-betterment. If you gave him any criticism, he would smile, look you in the eye, and say, "Well, that was the old Maurice. The new Maurice would never do that." He was so humble, yet he loved a good compliment, often telling the people that work for him that ass-kissing was grossly underrated. He was a consummate planner, constantly obsessing over the itinerary of a trip and tediously updating his to-do list in his little notebook that he carried with him everywhere. He even wrote the speech for my wedding the day after we got engaged. Yet despite always working towards the next great thing, there was nobody better at savoring the moment. His favorite place was the last place he went. His favorite movie was the last thing he watched. His favorite food was the last thing he ate. And his favorite shirt was probably covered in the last thing he ate. Now, a man who buys a blender for Valentine's Day for a wife who never cooks might not be what you'd call a hopeless romantic. But make no mistake, he loved my mom with all his heart. He celebrated every little quirky idiosyncrasy that makes my mom so special. And boy, did she love him too, often exclaiming that he was so dreamy and she dreamt him. He cherished her in a way that made it impossible for the three of us to believe in anything other than everlasting love. Love so intense and infectiously sustainable that it was passed down to us like a family heirloom. He was extremely tough on himself, but when it came to the people he cared about most, he celebrated even their most middling accomplishments. I believe that the way we feel about people is often directly correlated with how we feel about ourselves when we're around them, and my dad had a rare gift for making people feel like the best versions of themselves. He always knew how to make me feel supported, and from the moment they met, he extended that exact same love to my wife, River. He made it very clear to me, and anyone else willing to listen, just how much he adored her. He once told me that whenever he needed a smile, all he had to do was close his eyes and picture her face. Probably a good time to personally apologize again to Gary Reiner, who regularly fell victim to my dad's chronic case of river mentionitis. I am forever grateful for the way he welcomed her into our family, much like he did with everyone he cared for deeply. When I look out at this room full of people, I see living proof of this. I can feel the love you had for this truly exceptional man. Even though we are gathered here for a profoundly sad reason, I hope you all leave here today knowing that however much you loved him, he loved you just as much because, like a wise man once told me, feelings are usually mutual.
So, most eulogies follow a simple formula: celebrate the good and stay silent on the bad. But ironically, and perhaps cynically, I actually think you can infer many of the negative omissions as being simple consequences of the virtues. For example, when I hear militantly regimented, I also think rigid and inflexible. When I hear ferociously ambitious, I think good chance that guy missed a birthday or two. When I hear stubborn, I think that guy might have just been an asshole. Put simply, there's usually a catch, an asterisk, or a compromise. And despite our attempts at only describing the positives, we expect there's always an equal and opposite force on the other side. But not for my dad. His life defied these laws. He was militantly regimented, but would stop mid-set, cycle, or spreadsheet if any of his kids wanted to play ball. He was ferociously ambitious, but never missed a game, let alone a birthday. And yes, he was stubborn, but only in his sense of right versus wrong. As he'd often say, there are certain absolutes in life. His values were etched in stone, but if his actions ever deviated from this foundation, he apologized before you even knew he had wronged you. And with that laudatory introduction, I think it's the perfect time to tell you that my family says I'm just like him. Unfortunately for me, I can't claim his most admirable qualities like the ones I just described, but I undoubtedly share his quirks and peculiarities, and each time they manifest themselves, I'll be reminded of my dad. To list a few, we both have pretty severe OCD. And I'm not talking about the cool, hyper-organized version that half of Gen Z is self-diagnosed. No, we're the light switchers, the toe tappers, the get in and out of bed 5 times type, the very weird one. And somehow I actually remember the first time my dad and I connected on this. I was maybe 7 years old, and my mom and I just picked him up from the train. Surprised to no one, he dropped his glasses between his seat and the center console and asked me to turn on the back seat lights so he could find them. When I couldn't resist flipping the switch on and off 4 times, he looked back at me and asked why. When I told him I thought it would protect us, I figured I was getting a one-way ticket to therapy. Instead, he simply said, "Buddy, you really should consider changing to 5." I kid you not, from then on, my routine became 5. And to this day, when my nightly rituals are 25% less efficient, I will be reminded of my dad. Another related trait we share is an obsession over hygiene. Don't let the food on his face or his shirt or in his eyebrows fool you. The man had a zero-tolerance policy for unsanitary conditions. And it was at Yankee Stadium that he taught me a maneuver that will always stick with me. Rather than using his hand to flush the urinal, he would basically roundhouse kick the knob in order to avoid touching anything. And from now on, when I'm kickboxing in the grossest of public restrooms, I will be reminded of my dad. And last on our list of peculiarities, we cannot stand certain noises. Whether it's someone sneezing too loud, clearing their throat, or even tapping a pen, we just have no patience for it. His classic response when he'd get to his boiling point, "Hey, is that really necessary?" And the next time someone sneezes at dinner with me, I'll intentionally abstain from the bless you, and I'll be reminded of my dad. And I'd be remiss if I didn't spend time discussing some of the things I'll mourn most about him. There was no greater thrill than sharing a moment of success with my dad, however big or mundane. In fact, his reaction was greater than the triumph itself. He'd respond so emphatically, so curiously, trying to live every second with you. "So where were you when they told you? Were you expecting it? Did everyone go nuts?" To which I'd respond, "No, Dad, believe it or not, the reaction was actually pretty muted when I passed my routine physical." For as long as I live, and no matter what I accomplish, I will always be chasing that high to no avail. Then there are the small things. The enthusiastic greeting I'd get every time I called him. Without fail, he'd pick up and say, "Hiya, buddy," followed by the crashing of some device in the background. And perhaps most of all, I'll miss how often he would remind me how much he loved and admired my wife. He'd constantly say, "That Madeline, what can't she do?" And he beamed with pride when she took our last name, joking this was the only way there could ever be a Dr. Reznick. Now, as terrible of a disease as glioblastoma is, it does show some mercy. When he was diagnosed 2 years ago, we knew how the story would eventually end, even despite his inspiring will to live. And because of that, we devoted the last 2 years to spending as much intentional family time together as possible. Always an optimist, and with his signature recency bias, in my last words, Bruce, as you mentioned, this was true. He said the last 2 years were the best of his life. Such an unthinkable sentiment from anyone else enduring this devastating disease that had taken so much from him. He took that unshakable gratitude through to the very end. 2 weeks ago, my brother and I had a chance to sit with him and properly say goodbye. Despite having nearly lost his ability to speak, at one point he interjected, "Aren't we lucky that we get to have this conversation? There must be a God." That level of unwavering appreciation was emblematic of who my dad was. And while I'll never be able to match the depth of his gratitude for all of life's twists and turns, I understand it through my appreciation of him as a father. My dad was taken from us too soon, but it only hurts this much because he was such a remarkable human being. I'll carry him in my heart and in my mind everywhere I go. And when you leave today, I want everyone to remember that with my dad, there was no catch, no asterisk, no compromise. He was just perfect.
As we move toward the seemingly impossible task of saying goodbye, we turn to one of Maurice's favorite songs, reminding us that there are some whose place in our lives and hearts can never be replaced. May these words and this music comfort us as we remember Maurice with gratitude for the extraordinary life he lived and the love he leaves behind. There are places I'll remember all my life, though some have changed, some forever, not for better. Some have gone, and some remain. All these places had their moments with lovers and friends I still can recall. Some are dead and some are living. In my life, I've loved them all. But of all these friends and lovers, there is no one compares with you. All these memories lose their meaning when I think of love as something new. Though I know I'll never lose affection for people and things that went before, I know I'll often stop and think about them. In my life, I'll love you more. In my life, I'll love you more. Maurice's passing marks the end of 72 years of vibrant, loving life. Although nothing can replace his physical presence in the world, his memory lives on through this beautiful community assembled here in the sanctuary and present too on the live stream. In the Song of Songs it is written, "For love is stronger than death. It is the flame of God." The love you have for Maurice and his love for you, the ways he made you laugh and loved you, and the memories of the good times you shared, these are things that death has not and cannot touch. Jewish tradition teaches that human beings have two parts, a body and a soul. And when our bodies die, we ask God to take extra special loving care of the soul of Maurice. And that is the intention behind the memorial prayer, El Male Rachamim, which means God full of compassion. For this, I'll invite us to please rise in body or spirit. El Male Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim Uteharim, Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Yakireinu, Shehalach Leolamo, Baal Rachamim Yastirehu, Beseter Kenafav Lolamim, Vitzror Bitzror HaChaim, Et Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nachalato, וינוח משלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. Fully compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Maurice Reznick, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. In a moment, we'll conclude with Mourner's Kaddish. Before that, I'll mention that immediately following this gathering, there is a reception set up in the room directly behind this one. All are welcome to come, attend, be part of this continuation of sympathy and comfort for Maurice's family. We will be reading his name on our Kaddish list starting this Friday and continuing throughout the entire period of Shloshim, which is the 30-day mourning period following his passing, and would invite anyone and everyone who's moved to say Kaddish, whether or not you're connected to this congregation, you're welcome to come and say Kaddish for him and be part of this gathering. We meet every Friday at 6:30. We also always make a live stream available. In the summer months, we often meet on Campo Beach for Shabbat services, and that is the case next Friday. So all are welcome to the beach, to the sanctuary, to the live stream to come and say Kaddish for Maurice. Before we conclude, one more note I'll share. Just after we conclude, I'll invite Maurice's family to exit the sanctuary first. So I'll ask that everyone else please remain in place. Let them exit the sanctuary, and they'll be ready to greet you in the social hall immediately behind this room after. This is a reading I'll offer before Mourner's Kaddish. It's called Epitaph. When I die, if you need to weep, cry for someone walking the street beside you. And when you put your arms around others, give them what you need to give me. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands and souls touch souls. You can love me most by sharing your joys, multiplying your good deeds. You can love me most by letting me live in your eyes and not in your mind. And when you say Kaddish for me, remember what our Torah teaches. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. The ancient and sacred words of Mourner's Kaddish actually themselves only contain words of praise, though this prayer is associated with grief and mourning. I think the words of praise are teaching us that, and actually the laughter present in this gathering this morning too is teaching us the reason that we grieve is because of the blessing of life, of the blessing of having known and loved Maurice and being loved by him. So we offer Mourner's Kaddish for him in that spirit. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei ve'amlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'gala uv'izman kariv ve'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevorach le'olam umei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudashah b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. Amen. We'll conclude this gathering the way that we started with a prayer for peace. I'll invite all of us gathered to please be seated. I'll invite Maurice's family to begin to exit. Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, v'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. This concludes our service. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael.